I will always remember Dr. Rockis's lectures. Not so much because of the content of the lecture, but because of the fact that at the time that he was giving me the lecture, he wasn't actually attending in the ICU or even scheduled to work in the ICU. But he would come in because he would be in ICU withdrawal, and he would come in and talk to me about my patients, and we would discuss physiology and the patient management, and we'd go to the bedside, and we'd, change vent settings. And then of course I would round with my attending later and we would change the vent settings back. But anyway, what struck me was that Dr. Rockis is incredibly dedicated to his patients and also to teaching. So I would like to say thank you, Dr. Rockis.
So as doctors, when we take care of sick people, we often have to see if they're oriented to time, place, and person. And I had a real sick guy in the emergency room, and I had asked him the orientation questions. I said, "Do you know your name?" And he said, "Yeah, So I said, "Okay, it's okay. Do you know what year it is?" And he said, "Yeah, it's oh gosh." And I said, "That's all right." So I decided to ask the oriented to place question, and I said, "Do you know what state you're in?" And he paused for a moment, and then he said, "State of confusion?" And it was kind of a nice reminder that I'll take with me that even as sick as patients get, that we can all keep a good sense of humor.
So one of my favorite stories is when I was on emergency. I had a patient who I was admitting to Dr. Hines. So I called Dr. Hines to tell him about the patient. I told him this was a 26-year-old man who has a history of diabetes mellitus and supposedly ran out of his insulin prescription for the last 2 days and subsequently was found down in the parking lot. He was brought in and we started treatment for the DKA, but I was calling him for the admission. And his immediate response was, "This is what's wrong with our medical system today. How can someone like this run out of his medications? This is why I'm running for office, because these things shouldn't happen." And I sat there for a minute and thought about that, and I said, "Well, what do you want to do with the patient, Dr. Hines?"
Hello. I had a kind of a crazy day one morning. We were working in a plastic surgery office. I was helping out with the anesthesia, and we had just put to sleep a nice exotic dancer, and she, of course, was getting some beauty enhancement that day. And come to think of it, you see a lot of people wake up from anesthesia and they say funny things or things you probably don't want to hear, and that was that morning. So she starts to come around, and I was with my attending, female anesthesiologist, and the patient just said the most embarrassing thing to both of us. She was insinuating certain risque and sexual positions that she wanted us to be in and do to us, and for us to do to her too as well. And I was just taken back. I could not believe what I was hearing. We were both trying to shut her up and calm her down, and she was just in her seventh heaven right then and there. I don't think she knew what she was talking about, luckily. She probably won't even remember that, but I was just shocked. I was speechless, and then finally the only thing that I could come up with to say afterwards was, I think she violated my mental virginity there. It was something nobody's ever said like that to me before, even a complete stranger, but I think I'll remember that for a long time. And if you are going under anesthesia, try and keep those things to yourself next time. Just a word of advice. Thanks.
So a memorable story for me from the year is when I was on my ED rotation. So it was one of my first couple of shifts, and I didn't know the attending yet. And so I signed up for a patient with Dr. Mickey Miller. And I went and saw the patient, and after seeing the patient, I went to the physician's lounge area, which is a very small little cubbyhole, and I cornered Dr. Miller in that cubby hole to present the patient. Halfway through my presentation, he stopped me and put his hands on my shoulders, turned me around, and then stuck his finger in the middle of my scapula, right between my scapula, and pushed me all the way down the hall to the patient's room. Walked into the patient's room, said like one word to the patient, then walked out and said, yeah, go ahead and do that, and then sent him home. So that was my memorable moment with the ED.